Hi everyone, this is Kristen, a museum educator at the Providence Children's Museum. I have a really fun and creative book to share with you today. It's called Weslandia. It's by Paul Fleischman and it's illustrated by Kevin Hawks. All right, let's dive in. Some really unique drawings here. This is in some sort of script, some sort of letters that I'm not familiar with. Curious. Again, another opening page, Weslandia by Paul Fleischman and illustrated by Kevin Hawks. I wonder where this exotic place is. Of course he's miserable, moaned Wesley's mother. He sticks out. Like a nose, snapped his father. Listening through the heating vent, Wesley knew they were right. He was an outcast from civilization around him. He alone in his town disliked pizza and soda, alarming his mother and the school nurse. He found professional football stupid. He refused to shave off half his head in the hairstyle worn by the other boys, despite his father's bribe of $5. Passing his neighborhood's two styles of housing, garage on the left or garage on the right, Wesley alone dreamed of more exciting forms of shelter. He had no friends, but plenty of tormentors. Looks like he's having to run quite fast away from these children. Fleeing them was the only sport Wesley was good at. Each afternoon, his mother asked him what he'd learned in school that day, and Wesley would answer, that seeds are carried great distances by the wind. This is what he said on Wednesday. That each civilization has its staple of food crop, he answered on Thursday. That school's over and I should find a good summer project, he answered on Friday. And as always, his father mumbled, I'm sure you'll use that knowledge often. Suddenly, Wesley's thoughts shot sparks. His eyes blazed. His father was right. He could actually use what he'd learned that week for a summer project that would top all other summer projects. He would grow his own staple food crop and found his own civilization. Boy, Wesley has some big dreams, doesn't he? The next morning, he turned over a plot of ground in his yard. This means he sort of dug up and got the soil ready. That night, a wind blew in from the west. It raced through the trees. It set his curtains snapping. Wesley lay awake, listening. His land was being planted. He wasn't even doing anything, yet his land was being planted. 5 days later, the first seedlings appeared. A seedling is like when the seed starts to sprout. You'll have almighty bedlam on your hands if you don't get those weeds out, warned his neighbor. Actually, that's my crop, replied Wesley. In this type of garden, there are no weeds. Following ancient tradition, Wesley's fellow gardeners grew tomatoes, beans, Brussels sprouts, and nothing else. Wesley found it thrilling to open his land to chance, to invite the new and the unknown. Look at his neighbor's face. And Wesley's really closely examining these volunteer plants. Remember, they flew in on the wind. The plants shot up past his knees, then his waist. They seemed to be all of the same sort. Wesley couldn't find them in any plant book. Here's a picture of him measuring the plant. He has to use a very big tool to measure the blossom. Are those tomatoes, beans, or Brussels sprouts? Added Wesley's neighbor. None of the above, replied Wesley. They sure are attracting wildlife, though. Here's a lizard. Fruit appeared, yellow at first, then blushing to magenta. Wesley picked one up and sliced through the rind to the juicy purple center. He took a bite and found the taste an entrancing blend of peach, strawberry, pumpkin pie, and flavors he had no name for. Boy, let me say that again. He took a bite and found the taste an entrancing blend of peach, strawberry, pumpkin pie, and flavors he had no name for. Entrancing, like magical and just really mysterious. Ignoring the shelf of cereals in the kitchen, Wesley took to breakfasting on the fruit. He dried half a rind to serve as a cup, built his own squeezing device, and drank the fruit's juice throughout the day. Oh, he's being so inventive. Pulling up a plant, he found large tubers on the roots. These he boiled, fried, or roasted on the family barbecue, seasoning them with a pinch of the plant's highly aromatic leaves. These look very similar to a sweet potato or potato. A tuber is often something that grows underground and then generally is a potato. And then he was creating his own herbs, his own sprinkling seasonings. It was hot work tending to this crop. To keep off the sun, Wesley wove himself a hat from strips of the plant's woody bark. His success with the hat inspired him to devise a spinning wheel and loom on which he wove a loose-fitting robe from the stalk's soft inner fibers. He has a whole wardrobe, a whole outfit that he's created using just what grew on his farm, in his crop. He's starting to attract more than just the neighbors. Now it's also the kids from the neighborhood, in addition to the neighbor who's still saying, I don't see beans or Brussels sprouts. His schoolmates were scornful, then curious, grudgingly, like reluctantly, like not really wanting to do it. Grudgingly, Wesley allowed them 10 minutes apiece at his mortar, crushing the plant seeds to collect the oil. It's like a hard rock, and then you hit it with another hard rock and you grind it. And in this case, they were creating oil. This oil had a tangy scent and served him both as suntan lotion and mosquito repellent. He rubbed it on his face each morning and sold small amounts to his former tormentors at the price of $10 a bottle. Oh, he is so clever and crafty. So now he's making sunscreen and bug spray. And he's getting the kids in the neighborhood to help him make it. This reminds me of the story of Tom Sawyer. Over here, he has one of those kids with his half-shaved head fanning him. Boy, Wesley is really loving his summer project. What happened to your watch? Asked his mother one day. Wesley admitted that he no longer wore it. He told time by the stalk that he used as a sundial and had divided the day into 8 segments, 8 parts. The number of petals on the plant's flower. He'd adopted a new counting system as well, based likewise upon the number 8. His domain, home to many such innovations, he had named Weslandia. So he's talking about the 8 petals on these blossoms, on these flowers. Weslandia. He had created his own new home. Uninterested in traditional sports, Wesley made up his own. These were designed for a single player and used many different parts of the plants. His spectators looked on with envy. Realizing that more players would offer him more scope or more opportunity to use his skills, Wesley invented other games that would include his classmates, games rich with strategy and complex scoring systems. He tried to be patient with the other players' blunders. Look at this. So here's a game where they're up on stalks. They have to carry a bag with the fruit. They have to have like a basket, something that you hold in your hand that looks like a basket, and then you have to throw it through these loops. This is quite a complicated game. Reminds me of a lot of different games. One of them being Highlight, where you use a basket on your hand. August was unusually hot. Wesley built himself a platform and took to sleeping in the middle of Weslandia. He passed the evenings playing a flute he'd fashioned from a stalk, or gazing up at the sky, looking at the constellations. Oh, renaming the constellations. Made himself a little fort. Here he is. Made himself a hammock. He probably wove that. And he's looking up at the skies, and he's playing his flute. His parents noted Wesley's improved morale, his attitude, his behaviors. "It's the first time in years he's looked happy," said his mother. Wesley gave them a tour of Weslandia. "Now, what do you call this plant?" asked his father. Not knowing its name, Wesley had begun calling it Swist, Swist, from the sound of its leaves rustling in the breeze. In like manner, he'd named his new fabrics, games, and foods until he'd created an entire language. Look at this. Really is an unusual garden compared to the rest of the neighborhood. Really makes them stand out. Mixing the plant's oils with soot, Wesley made a passable ink. As the finale to his summer project, the last big thing, he used the ink and his own 80-letter alphabet to record the history of his civilization's founding. 80-letter alphabet to record the history of his civilization's founding. In September, Wesley returned to school. Here's Wesley working on his alphabet and then writing the history, writing the story of his community called Weslandia. And in September, he returned to school. And he had no shortage of friends. The end. And now we know what that, though at the beginning I said, I don't recognize these letters. And now I know that this is the language spoken in Weslandia. Wow. Wesley was certainly creative and crafty and clever, wasn't he? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this story. I hope you have a chance to go out and or stay in and build yourself a little community. Maybe make a fort, maybe hide under a pillow, create a little space for yourself and play some pretend. All right, have a great day.